Previously on Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. People die. A lot. And we gots to find out who did it. This time though, something's off. Especially considering the fact that Makoto was blamed for it and Monokuma rushed to his execution. But the last remnants of alter ego prevented that from happening. Seriously, how did he not die from that fall? Kyoko jumps after him to let him know that the headmaster of Hope's Peak is her dad. And, I mean, she does kind of have to get him out of there, too. That's kind of important. Also, she believes that the reason everything is happening is due to a certain tragedy. Anyway, here's the final chapter of Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. Now, before we begin the final chapter, there's something you should know first. Every Danganronpa game has 6 chapters. In the last one, the story kind of turns completely on its head. With that said, let's continue. The final chapter, Chapter 6, Ultimate Pain, Ultimate Suffering, Ultimate Despair, Ultimate Execution, Ultimate Death. Jeez. Opens up on Kyoko and Makoto getting out of that garbage pit. Kyoko uses the skeleton key and is able to unlock the doors. They then climb up a long shaft that would give me incredible acrophobia if I had to climb that. Hell, I may already be getting that just by looking at it. To keep his mind off of it, Makoto asks Kyoko about her past detective life. She opens up and explains that she has been a detective and was expected to be one as long as she lived because she comes from a long line of detectives. However, not many people have heard of her family because they purposely ostracize themselves from society so they can always have a neutral standpoint in every case they take. But because she wanted to find her dad, she broke that creed and revealed herself to the school. But she didn't want to find her dad to reconnect with him. It was actually because she wanted to tell him that she was severing all ties with him. Basically, her dad was next in line to take up the detective mantle in her family, but he wasn't interested in detective work. This caused a major dispute between him and his grandfather. Because of this, Kyoko's dad cut himself off from the family altogether, including a very young Kyoko. It also doesn't help that Kyoko's mom had passed away shortly before that. While Kyoko wasn't very sad about him abandoning her, she always hated that other members of her family took pity on her and that it still felt like she was living under her dad's shadow. After that, they climbed the rest of the way in complete silence. They end up climbing out of a hatch that was in the middle of the garbage room. Kyoko suggests that they head to Monokuma themselves to show that Makoto escaped rather than just waiting for him to find them. While Makoto is obviously worried about what would happen to him and Kyoko, Kyoko says not to worry about it because the mastermind's ensnared.
Okay.
They go to the gym and find Monokuma, who is understandably pissed at Makoto for not being dead. But then Kyoko confronts Monokuma. She tells him that she knows that he had planned to kill her off because he knew she was a threat. But when Makoto covered for her, he chose Makoto instead because Monokuma realized that he was a threat as well. But he also didn't plan on alter ego showing up either. Kyoko believes that the mastermind killed Mukuro, which would mean that the mastermind would have to be punished instead. And the mastermind can't kill Makoto now because if they did, the people watching this show would get really upset because they would think the mastermind killed off Makoto because Kyoko was right. So basically what she does is ask for a do-over of the class trial. And this time, Monokuma has to join in. And believe it or not, Monokuma agrees to this. But on one condition. They have to figure out all the mysteries of the school itself on top of Mukuro's investigation. And if they don't, everyone dies. And he also states that since the killing game began, no one except for the 16 students have stepped in or out of the school. Then he decides to shut up and shoos them out of the gym so he can begin setting up the biggest execution yet. Whoopee. Makoto, amazed that he's still alive at this point, thanks Kyoko for everything. Though he still wants an explanation as to why Monokuma would agree to something like this. Kyoko believes that Monokuma's, or rather the mastermind's, whole plan was to hijack the airwaves as they said and force the students to kill each other and air that to the world, most likely to prove a point. That point being that since Hope's Peak students are supposed to represent hope for the future, having them kill each other would prove that despair is ultimately better than hope. Hence the reason why there's the regulations and why the mastermind has to follow them as well. If the mastermind were just to kill the students themselves, then they wouldn't have their point proven and the mastermind would be viewed by the audience as nothing more than a glorified serial killer. And since the mastermind couldn't directly kill Kyoko because she hasn't broken any of the school regulations, they set up the sham trial. When that didn't work, they tried to kill Makoto instead, who also wasn't the killer. Basically, the mastermind broke their own rules. When Kyoko revealed that little detail to the entire world, thanks to the camera setup everywhere, the mastermind had no choice but to accept the proposal. However, we're not out of the woods yet. Kyoko and Makoto head to the dining hall to find everyone. After a joyful reunion, they explain what's going on. Then Monokuma makes an announcement saying that all the rooms are now unlocked. Before they begin to investigate, Kyoko suggests that they all go on their own because the mastermind is most likely one of them. Everyone goes their separate ways and begins investigating. Makoto decides that he needs to check all the newly opened areas and heads to the second floor of the dorms. You know, it's a bit of a fixer-upper, but I think it could work as a dorm. Just clean up some of the blood and rubble. The rooms are pretty much the same. Nothing but remnants of something that went horribly wrong. The bathrooms are in surprisingly good condition, though. There's a locker room, but there's not a lot here either. Most of the lockers are beyond saving, and the ones that are still good require the locker owner's e-handbook in order to access it. There's also the headmaster's private room where he finds Kyoko. He finds a PC which whoever last used it was trying to find out info about the ultimate despair. Rather than them being an individual, it seems to point towards a whole group of people. However, there's not much more info than that. There's also a strange gap in the wall which both Makoto and Kyoko believe it leads to a hidden room. There is a program on the PC that opens it, but you have to enter the right password. Kyoko tried looking through all of her dad's paperwork and used keywords there, but to no avail. However, Makoto may have an idea. Kyoko's name. He types it in and it works. And Kyoko's a bit upset now. Not at Makoto, but at her dad. They walk into the hidden room and find... presents? Kyoko has an idea as to what's in the box and warns Makoto not to scream. Makoto opens the box and screams anyway because there's bones inside. Specifically, the headmaster's bones. Kyoko's dad.
Happy Christmas.
Makoto notices that Kyoko's calm, or rather trying to seem calm. He leaves her alone and looks around. He searches through a desk and finds an e-handbook that's labeled "In Case of Emergency." Basically an e-handbook that can unlock anything that has a card reader. Makoto also finds a picture frame on top of a drawer. The picture in the frame is... oh boy. That's gonna cause some more parental issues. And we get a brief glimpse of a very surprised Kyoko. She actually starts to get angry, believing that her father stole her only chance to move on from the past. She then asks Makoto to leave while she gets all her emotions sorted out. Oh yes, it was an intense emotional moment. I couldn't stop thinking about the bones. And that's when it clicked. That poor dude at the beginning of the prologue that was shot off into space was the headmaster. He decides not to worry about that for now and goes into the locker rooms. He uses the emergency handbook to open some of the intact lockers. The first one he opens is very disorganized, has a crystal ball in it, and has a notebook that belongs to...
Why the hell is there always evidence pointing to you?
Inside Hiro's notebook is a list of different classes that he attended, meaning he attended classes at Hope's Peak at some point. But again, this is not proof of anything, especially since he was held back several times and maybe just didn't tell anyone he had gone to Hope's Peak before. Because it would be just like Hiro to forget something like that. Another locker has a pocketbook that belongs to Kyoko. Makoto flips through it and comes across a very familiar entry. It's long, but essentially it says that Kyoko found out about the plan to isolate the students and that her dad was the one that came up with the plan. When she confronted him, he told her everything about it and that he wanted to do this to save the future generation. However, Kyoko wasn't consulted in the matter and considers her dad selfish for coming up with the plan. This literally contradicts what just went down in that hidden room, because according to Kyoko, she had not seen her dad since he abandoned her and her family. Makoto keeps flipping through the book and comes across another entry, this time much more messy. It simply says, "Despair walks among us, and so we survive." There's a second despair. This just makes Makoto's head spin more. He puts the pocketbook away and just continues the investigation. He leaves the dorms and heads to the data center where he finds Hina. Hina wanted to go into the Monokuma door, but she's nervous that it might explode or something. So Makoto opens it. Inside they find what appears to be a cockpit. Hina, despite being terrified of a possibly rigged door, decides to just start pushing buttons. She pushes one marked data center and a sound comes from the next room. Makoto checks it out and finds an idle Monokuma. Then it starts talking. But it's actually Hina voicing him from the other room, which means that that cockpit is what controls Monokuma. Hina lets him know that she can't see anything else on the screen other than Monokuma's point of view, which means Kyoko was right with her theory that the mastermind can't monitor them and control Monokuma at the same time. As they're leaving, Makoto notices a hatch in the floor, but it doesn't budge. When they leave the data center, all of a sudden the room locks. Monokuma then shows up and lets them know that they can't go in there anymore, and also rubs in the fact that the mastermind was in that hatch. But it couldn't be opened from the outside anyway, so no one could do anything about that, but still, they were so close. After Monokuma leaves, Hina runs off to tell everyone what they found, while Makoto heads to the headmaster's office where he finds Byakuya. Byakuya shows Makoto a file that's dedicated to class number 78, and it has profiles on every single one of them, including Mukuro, which we had seen already. But as it turns out, there's a second page to Mukuro's profile. In it, the headmaster is worried that Mukuro could be connected to the Ultimate Despair. He's also wary of the fact that she is a tremendous soldier, seeing as how she doesn't even appear to have any wounds or scars on her despite being in such an intense militia group. Makoto believes this confirms that Mukuro was a part of the Ultimate Despair. But if she was, why would they kill her? And how did she get killed, because she's obviously been trained very well. Byakuya also points out her details. 5'7", 97 pounds, and even her measurements. 31, 22, 32.
Damn, this school is very thorough.
Byakuya thinks that info may be important later. For example, in the slight chance that the corpse isn't actually Mukuro. Byakuya isn't even convinced that that's true though, so we'll see what happens with that. Byakuya also warns him that Kyoko may not be who she seems to be, but then again he thought Hina killed Sakura, so I don't know if he's trustworthy in that department. There's nothing much else of interest in there, so Makoto heads to the dojo where he finds Toko.
And Bingo was her name.
Toko lets Makoto know that there's nothing of interest in the dojo, and also that she's going through another lack of self-esteem episode. He leaves there and heads to the garden where there's no one.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, no one. Not even the body. He checks everywhere, but the body's not anywhere in the garden. He looks at the tarp in the tool shed though and notices some writing that reads Biolab. So that's where he heads next. Once there, he immediately notices how cold it is in there, most likely due to the mortuary cabinets over on the right side of the room. He notices that some of the lights are on while others are off. Makoto finds an instruction manual that lets him know that when the blue lights are on, that means there's a corpse in there. And if there's a problem, the red lights will be on and an alarm will ring out. Makoto stops for a brief second, realizing that everyone who had died so far are all in those containers. He puts that behind him and leaves the biolab. Or morgue in this case. An announcement rings out from Monokuma saying he has a hint for everyone in the gym. Makoto heads there and finds Hiro all spooked. He says he heard what Monokuma had to say, but won't relay any details and hurries out of there. Nervous, Makoto heads into the gym. There he finds Monokuma waiting for him with an envelope. He lets Makoto know that he's not going to be answering any questions Makoto has. Makoto opens the envelope and finds a photo. One that has everyone there, except for him. But Mukuro's also there. Now Makoto's getting paranoid, so he decides to talk to everyone else and see if they remember anything. Hiro freaks out and runs away again. Hina does the same. Byakuya just asks to leave him alone. Toko's passed out in the biolab because she opened up one of the cabinets. But then she shoots up as Genocide Jill, of course not remembering what happened because their memories aren't the same. As Genocide Jill leaves, Kyoko shows up feeling better and offers to help close the fridge. But she stops, realizing that it's Mukuro's body. She didn't get a chance to actually examine it, so she does that. While she's checking it out, Makoto notices the pile of tarps over to the side like the one he found at the tool shed. He also notices that the blue lights are glaring on 9 of the cabinets, including Mukuro's, signifying that they're being used. He tries to talk to Kyoko about the picture, but she wants nothing to do with it, believing that whatever Monokuma's hint is just to confuse everyone at this point. Kyoko finishes her examination of Mukuro and determines that the stomach wound where the knife was and the blow to the back of the head were inflicted after she died, which means the only way she could have died were those other wounds that were several days old, possibly meaning that she has actually been dead for quite some time. Kyoko also determines that yes, this is indeed Mukuro's body. Her height and measurements are accounted for, and then there's that tattoo, of course. Makoto then asks Kyoko about that pocketbook he found earlier, which Kyoko is very surprised to hear about. But she claims that pieces are now falling into place and hands him a DVD labeled Class Number 78 Urgent Interviews, which she found in the hidden room after he left. He heads to the AV room and plays the DVD. At first, nothing shows up, but then an image of the headmaster and Sayaka appear. The headmaster states that this video's purpose serves as insurance. He then lets Sayaka know that there's a chance that she might have to spend the rest of her life here at the school and asks if she would be willing to cooperate. Well, considering how everything escalated, I think we can determine what her answer is. Exactly. Wait, what? Makoto's head's pretty much been spinning so much since this investigation started that I'm surprised that he hasn't changed his gender to attack helicopter. But in all fairness, I mean, she was willing to frame Makoto, the only friendly face she had in this place, for murder. So why would she say yes to this? Just then, the screen lights up again. It's the same interview, but this time Makoto's on screen. And also agreeing to this. The video keeps showing the same interview with Byakuya, Toko, and Hina, and they're all agreeing to potentially living the rest of their lives in the school. Even Kyoko, to which there's now proof that she has already met her dad. But before the video plays further, the DVD player shuts down, thanks to Monokuma. Makoto begins to question whether or not he and everyone else also lost their memories, but he does find it a bit weird that these memory losses seem to benefit the mastermind. Then the announcement bell rings, signaling the final class trial. Makoto and Kyoko are the first to arrive. Everyone else slowly comes in, but they're all silent. Like paranoia type of silent. Except for Genocide Jill, who sneezes and turns back into Toko. Now she's just confused. Everyone gets on the elevator and silently rides it down to start the final class trial. They begin the trial and Monokuma reminds everyone that if they figure out what's going on with the school and who is Mukuro's killer, then he will execute himself. No loopholes, no plan B, Monokuma and the mastermind will die if they figure everything out. Hiro, Hina, and Byakuya all start accusing everyone else of being the mastermind. Makoto shows the group photo he got from Monokuma, the one without him in it, and asks the rest of them for their pics. The photos that they show don't have Hina, Hiro, and Byakuya in them respectively. In other words, Kyoko was right in the fact that the mastermind was trying to confuse them and turn them against each other. They start blaming Monokuma for making up such an obviously fake picture, but Monokuma assures them that they're all real. Makoto believes this and thinks him and everyone else were subjected to memory loss, as pointed out by the fact that they don't remember being interviewed by the headmaster. Makoto tells them about the contents of the DVD, how they were all in it, and how they all said yes to potentially living the rest of their lives in the school. Everyone's still doubtful, especially about the whole saying yes thing, but all the evidence points to that being true. Monokuma confirms that they all did lose their memories at the same time, but Makoto thinks it's more along the lines of Monokuma stealing their memories. When they ask Monokuma how he could steal their memories, he replies with,
"Would you really believe anything I said? How it happened doesn't matter right now."
Look, a woman was actually a man, someone got turned into butter of all things, and there's been many examples of futuristic technology right before our very eyes, so I think we can have a little bit of leeway here. But instead, they now have to figure out which memories were stolen. Monokuma says it all has to do with the original motive, meaning the reason why the killing game is happening in the first place. But he doesn't want to focus on that part just yet, and instead focuses on Mukuro's murder. While they all know it's the mastermind that did it, they still have to prove that it was in fact the mastermind. First off, they do establish that the mastermind is indeed within the school, because of that panel that controls Monokuma. Kyoko lets everyone know that it wasn't the blow to the back of the head that killed Mukuro, but rather the numerous wounds all over her body. She also unveils her theory on how her murder could have happened several days ago, since that's how old the wounds are. And Mukuro didn't have any wounds or scars when she entered the school, according to the report from the headmaster. So if this theory's true, then who was it that attacked Makoto in his room last night if it wasn't Mukuro? Makoto believes it was the true mastermind. Monokuma voices his objection, but since there's a lack of tattoo on the assailant's right hand, it obviously has to be the mastermind. Monokuma blames others, but Byakuya, Toko, Hina, and Hiro all have alibis. And Kyoko, well, to prove that it wasn't her, she removes her gloves, showing off the intense scars she received from when she was an inexperienced detective. Monokuma relents, but does not back down completely, especially since they don't know exactly how she was killed and specifically when. They ask Monokuma if she was dead before they arrived, to which he says no, meaning that she was killed in secret. But her body wasn't decomposed, meaning that her body was most likely placed in one of the fridges in the biolab. And there is proof to solidify that theory. The tarp that was brought from the biolab into the garden where they found Mukuro's body. It was most likely used to carry the body, covered as protection from the sprinklers, and then placed in the tool shed. The coat that was covering the body when they found it was placed on afterwards. Monokuma starts to get nervous, which Kyoko believes that means that the secret to discovering the mastermind's true identity is hidden somewhere in the biolab, since that's where the tarp came from. Monokuma then gets real nervous because as Makoto's about to reveal what that clue to the mastermind is, he starts reminding Makoto about the video of his family. Makoto ignores him anyway. That clue? The 9 blue lights on the cabinets. Oh, it's one of those very insignificant looking but actually turns the whole case around clues. Well, alright then. Let's take a look at who's died so far. Sayaka, Junko, Leon, Chihiro, Mondo, Hifumi, Taka, Celeste, Sakura, and Mukuro. That makes 10. So if the mastermind was one of the 6 still alive, that means there should be 10 lights on, but there's only 9. So what does that mean? Well, it seems that Mukuro may have been killed twice. I feel as if I should explain that a little bit better. So Mukuro could have been disguised as someone else from the very beginning. When Mukuro was killed in her disguise was when she was actually killed. Then her body was reused for the last trial, and the mastermind used explosives to cover up the fact that they were reusing the body. Oh, and if you're wondering if Mukuro could be the mastermind and was using someone else's body, that's not gonna cut it. Because the body matches up with her profile and it has that Fenrir tattoo on it. So using these facts, if Mukuro was working with the Ultimate Despair, then whoever she disguised herself as would be the remaining student. And by this logic, the mastermind. So who could it be? Well, considering that Mukuro died from multiple stab wounds, let's just look through all the deaths again, shall we? Alright, so Sakura was poisoned, so it couldn't be her. Mondo was turned into butter. Still don't know the logistics behind that, but it wasn't him. Chihiro, Taka, and Hifumi were all hit on the head. Sayaka was stabbed, but it was only once. Leon was hit with 1,000 baseballs. Celeste was run over by a fire truck, and Junko was... Oh my god. I mean, there were the fake nails around the body, and the tattoo could have been covered up with foundation. Which it wouldn't be surprising to see the ultimate fashionista wearing excessive amounts of it. And don't forget that in the prologue, Makoto noticed that Junko did not look like her magazine covers, which she blamed on photoshopping. And even when Junko died, she said things like, "This wasn't supposed to," and "Why me?" Monokuma denies this, but Makoto remembers when that DVD player shut off because of Monokuma. If Makoto had finished the video, he would have seen Junko's real face. And when you take another look at the group photos, Junko's face is not shown in any of the pictures, proving that Junko Inoshima is the ultimate despair and the true mastermind behind the killing game. Monokuma is now silent. Everyone is trying to make him give up now that his ruse is over. But then...
Over? Did you really think the story would end once we reached the climax of the case? Wrong! There's still plenty more to go!
Oh boy, here we go.
While it may be only a short period of time, Junko is one of the most fun parts of this game. Every time she's on screen, she just steals the entire show. Hell, even the way Junko introduces herself is just insane.
If you swear your fealty to us, we will reward you with half of the entire world! We've even drawn up the deed already. We will grant you honor, status, in some of our home cooking. Have you made your choice? Will you serve under us?
Oh, did you think I was being serious? Sorry, I was just messing with you.
She's not even been on screen for a minute. She's already giving me whiplash. Let's go!
Junko reveals that the reason she and Mukuro were able to pull off that disguise so well was because they were twins.
I know, it's such a cliche, right? I'm almost embarrassed to admit it. So basically, Mukuro and I had your stereotypical twin relationship. The older sister, tough and proud. That was Mukuro. The younger sister, smart and cute. That was...
Me! Junko Enoshima!
Okay, I think I should explain the sudden shift in personality.
Basically, she gets bored easily, even with herself. So she switches between like 6 different personalities to keep herself from getting bored.
Holy Danganronpa predicted TikTok kids faking mental illnesses.
Junko switches to her 4th personality and explains that the reason why they switched was because both were in on the killing game from the beginning, and Junko thought it was easier to run things behind the scenes. But she didn't think Mukuro would be easily liked by the other students, so she had her disguised as Junko. But Junko didn't think she was doing a good job and killed her off as an example to the other students. Also, she was becoming bored.
Boredom can do things to you. Also narcissism in this case.
Makoto's wondering how Junko can talk so casually about sacrificing her own sister. Being the ultimate despair, she's practically suicidal. Same with Mukuro. They didn't care if they died. So does Junko feel remorse? She actually does. And that's what gets her going. Being the ultimate despair, any action that causes her or others to feel unbearable despair is what excites her. It feels good to her. So much so that she's jealous that Mukuro went out in such a cruel way because she must have felt so much despair in that moment. I think Hiro says it best.
What the hell is wrong with you?
Junko then lets them know that they haven't solved all the mysteries of the school yet, which is of course the only way she's gonna let them go. They start grilling her about their lost memories, but she said that she's already hinted at those already. That being the motives that she had come up with. The first motive was based off of human connections, like seeing your loved ones in danger and wanting to flee the school because of it. The second motive was based off of the past, which were those big secrets being revealed to the world. The third motive was based off of greed, just pure money this time. The fourth motive, which led Sakura to sacrifice herself, was based off of betrayal. The fact that everyone, Junko included, turned against Sakura. The reason why we're listing off these motives is what Junko's philosophy is. The seed of despair. This hypothetical seed of despair is essentially any motive that can be used for harm. And a seed needs nourishment, that being hope. If there is no such thing as hope, then there can be no despair. For true despair is found when all of your hopes are shattered. So what does this seed of despair have to do with their memories? Well, everything. Junko claims that the reason everyone wants to leave is because she took their memories. And that desire to leave is a small glimmer of hope that will make despair flourish. Everyone's confused by all this, so she decides to show them her vision of true despair. That being the outside world. A TV screen pops up in what's shown as explosions, riots, and Monokuma's face on every major landmark in the world. According to Junko, these images were part of the memories that were taken from them. But Makoto has an idea. Genocide Jill. Since her memories are separate from Toko's and Toko doesn't seem to remember, Genocide Jill might remember what had happened. So they bring her out and she actually does remember. While she doesn't remember any specifics, she recounts her part of what happened. It all started with the tragedy. Yes, that tragedy. The biggest, most awful, most tragic event in human history. This tragedy happened about a year ago. It was so bad that even Genocide Jill was shaken. And because of that tragedy, the world turned out the way it is now. That's all she remembers. As I said, no specifics were given, but the world is still essentially in ruins. Junko also decides to let Byakuya in on a little secret. His family name, everything that makes him the ultimate affluent progeny, has fallen. His family, relatives, distant relatives, they're all dead because of the events that spawned from the tragedy that happened a year ago. But Makoto's confused as to the timeline. I mean, they did have some memory loss, but they only came to the school a few weeks ago, right?
Well, it turns out that little intro scene in the prologue before everything went all swirly, that happened 2 years ago. The memories that were specifically taken from them was their life at Hope's Peak. And there is evidence to back this claim up.
And that evidence is Hiro's notebook. The one that was found in the locker. When Makoto shows it to Hiro, he almost immediately recognizes his handwriting. It also explains Kyoko's pocketbook, which also has her handwriting in it. Neither of them remember writing these things in there, but there's no doubt that it really was their handwriting. When everyone introduced themselves in the beginning, that obviously was not their first time meeting each other. They actually were all members, Junko and Mukuro included, of the same class. That explains all the group photos.
So what's real tragic about this is that they all knew each other, they were friends with each other, and then their memories got erased and then they started killing each other. With the exception of Junko and Mukuro, of course. As if everyone's deaths weren't already heavy enough.
Junko then flips, proclaiming her love for everyone.
Good God, I don't even know what's going on anymore.
And decides to explain more. The first year everyone was at Hope's Peak was nothing short of pure joy. Everyone was friends with each other, they actually had a good time learning. Everything was all sunshine and rainbows. And then the tragedy happened. And that tragedy set everything in motion. All these events eventually made their way to Hope's Peak, killing off most of the students who lived there. Kyoko has, understandably, a hard time believing that Junko and Mukuro were the sole reason for the apocalyptic scenario going on in the world. But Junko claims it really was just them. Once the tragedy occurred, a tragedy that they started by the way, the despair that it caused basically acted as a domino effect around the world because, according to Junko, despair is contagious. Junko then gets back to the story. The 78th class of Hope's Peak Academy were the only surviving students left. The headmaster, who was still alive at the time, turned Hope's Peak into a shelter to protect the surviving students from the outside world, which explains the interviews. His idea may have been something along the lines of, if the collective hope of a new generation could survive, maybe the world could have a fresh start. But unfortunately, he never caught on that Junko and Mukuro were the ones that started everything to begin with. And their shelter ended up becoming their prison, or in some cases their tomb. And the most ironic part, it was the students themselves that barred everything. The windows, the doors, all the exits, they were the ones who put those metal plates there. Once they were barred in, Junko and Mukuro got to work. Everything they had worked for hinged on this killing game. In fact, Junko made sure that the class survived the tragedy so that they could eventually kill each other.
But why? Well, imagine this. There's an entire class of students left from Hope's Peak that are meant to be the hope for the next generation. Then finding out that this class that you thought was dead along with all the other students of Hope's Peak is actually still alive. Now imagine you see those last little specks of hope killing each other on live television. That would send the world over the brink of despair.
According to Junko, there are some people that still have hope out in the world, so she hijacked the airwaves to show everyone that there's no hope left. People have actually tried to rescue the students, but Junko had installed a whole bunch of heavy weaponry around the school grounds, which made short work of them. And the final kicker? Junko wanted the students to solve the mysteries surrounding the school, so that when they discovered that the truth, and the world for that matter, is utterly hopeless, they themselves would fall into despair along with the rest of the world, thus killing off any hope left standing. Oh, and the motives that we went through earlier? Meaningless. The world's pretty much gone to hell, so all those motives would have amounted to nothing. They've been killing each other for nothing but false hopes. Junko's motivation? No reason why. She just craves despair. No argument, no understanding, just despair. The more you dwell on that, the more terrifying Junko seems to be. Someone who doesn't care whether they live or die, or whether their plan succeeds or fails because in the end they get what they want, is truly a terrifying villain. Because you will never ever know what she would do next. Despite everything that has been revealed to them, Makoto is still refusing to give up. But Junko has another ace up her sleeve. Since it's the final vote, if the vote is not unanimous, Junko's still gonna punish everybody. But instead of an execution, their punishment will be to live the rest of their lives in the school. Except for Makoto, who will be immediately executed because Junko can't stand him anymore. Junko, though, is gonna abstain from voting.
See, here's the thing. It's actually going to be a hard decision. Sacrifice Makoto, live the rest of your life in the school with no worries, everything you would need to survive while under Junko's rule. Or defeat Junko, leave the school, and go into a chaotic and broken world where you most likely wouldn't survive, but you have freedom. So it really comes down to either freedom or security, and in this world, you can't have both.
Everyone's struggling with this decision too, which worries Makoto quite a bit. Even Kyoko's struggling because her dad's last wish was to make sure that all the students survived. Makoto decides to keep having faith in his friends, though.
So boring. Stubborn till the very end, huh?
Junko looks normal. Must be getting serious.
Makoto tries to convince everyone one at a time that living in the school would be giving into true despair, which isn't really living. Hiro says that even though all his fortune-telling senses are telling him to stay, he realizes that he really needs to rely on his gut this time. Hina realizes that if Sakura were here, she would be defying the mastermind wholeheartedly, and Hina decides to take after her. Genocide Jill says that she's just gonna go with whatever as long as Byakuya is with her. Speaking of which, Byakuya resolves not to give up either because he swore that he would end the life of the mastermind. Also, the Togami family name isn't dead yet because he's still alive and vows to restore it. Kyoko says that while her dad's last wish was to keep everyone alive, staying at the school would go against that wish, since they would have to sacrifice Makoto, and that's technically not keeping everyone alive. Kyoko also directly addresses Makoto that she believes that it wasn't luck that brought him here to Hope's Peak. She believes he was brought here by some unknown force to bring the ultimate despair down to its knees. And if that's the case, he could be considered the ultimate hope? These interactions send Junko into a rage because she can't stand the positivity radiating from them and lashes out at Makoto. But he still doesn't back down. He and everyone else vote for Junko. Junko is surprised, to put it mildly, that they all went that way, but she's still happy. Because she worked hard for 2 years to bring the world into despair, take over the headmaster's plan, and even killed her own sister just to fail at the end. And that, to her, is true despair. And she could not be any more excited.
Happy because you are experiencing overwhelming sadness. Seems plausible to me.
Junko admits defeat, but warns them that no matter what the outcome would have been, despair is truly everywhere. Makoto doesn't believe this because they are still alive and they're gonna go outside with hope in their hearts. Everyone sides with him. Even freaking Byakuya steps up and defends him.
This is like his only redeemable moment in the game. At least we were able to end it with some sort of respect for his character.
Junko, disgusted by their words, announces she's gonna get everything over with and go through with the punishment. Makoto actually tries to convince her not to go through with it, but she isn't hearing it. The act of living brings her no hope, so why continue living? All she wants is the despair of death. Wow, she really is suicidal.
So you're probably wondering, what is this extra special punishment that she saved for the end? Literally everything.
Call it karma, call it poetic justice, call it whatever the hell you want, but she literally goes through every single punishment that was inflicted on everyone in the game. Even the headmaster's execution. And she goes through it all with a smile on her face. Well, you know what I have to say to that? Sayonara, motherfucker! One other little thing I've seen pointed out by Danganronpa fans. In that very last moment, right before the mechanism kills her, she looks up briefly because the machine stalls. Well, considering how quickly she gets bored, she most likely didn't die with despair, but boredom because everything stopped for a brief moment. To go through everyone's punishments and not even get what she wanted in the end is true poetic justice.
And that's how we close on Chapter 6. But don't worry, this isn't the end yet, for there's an epilogue.
Titled Goodbye Despair High School. It opens on the surviving students, Makoto, Kyoko, Byakuya, Toko, Hina, and Hiro, standing in front of the door in the main hall. Despite them having defeated Junko and her evil schemes, they are still a little hesitant about leaving. What if the world is as dangerous as Junko claims it is? What if they don't make it very long? But Junko could have been lying as well. Regardless, if they don't do anything, their decision and their lives won't really amount to anything. Plus, the world is a big place. There's still a chance that there is hope out there. Besides them, of course. Fueled by hope, Makoto grabs the override controller left by Junko and opens the door.
Everyone died. The end.
Nah, I'm just kidding. While we don't exactly see what happens to them or what the outside world's like, I have hope that they're gonna be alright.
Things are getting very interesting indeed. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not a teddy bear. I am Monokuma. And I am this school's headmaster.
Or maybe not.
So that was Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. It's a crazy game, crazy characters, crazy world, crazy everything. But that's what makes it fun. The unpredictability, the mystery, the story, it's all pretty out there, but it's definitely worth your time. If you didn't find this experience fulfilling, I highly recommend you play the game for yourself. There's a lot of character interactions in the game that I didn't put in that really fleshes out the cast pretty well. Anyway, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more Breaking It Down. It'd be kind of hard though to find a game that has a story that's just as good or even better than this, so who knows when that'll be. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Peace. Yeah, no need to threaten me. I'm gonna do it. Hey everyone, this is me 3 years later, editing everything, and it only just now dawned on me that starting from chapter 4, there were only 2 deaths, Sakura and Junko, both of them being self-inflicted, which means that Hiro was right in his prediction that there were gonna be no more murders, and I do not know how to take this information. Anyway, that's the end of this for real this time. Bye!
Good